the reason why we push these shadows away, and it comes back to this notion of taboo being taboo. We push our shadows away because we're afraid of social rejection. Because if we bring these parts of ourselves forward that are technically not acceptable in this world that we live in, then we're going to be alone. Like that's what our brain has tricked us into thinking. And what this culture, this very Western centric culture has taught us into thinking, that if we show up as our whole selves, we are no longer lovable.
Hey everyone, welcome to Josette's Soul Salon, where we have weekly conversations that answer the question, what does it take to live a soul-expressed life? I'm your host, Josette Leblanc, and during this episode, I talk with author and shaman Leilani Mañulu about the nature of a taboo persona, a concept I learned about in a program designed by author and teacher Carolyn Elliott. During this juicy episode, Leilani and I explore the impact of creating a taboo persona and how this can help us integrate our shadow parts. Leilani is the author of Paradox of the Water Bearer, which recounts the story of her spiritual awakening, and the host of the Intuitive Activist podcast. Leilani is an interpreter of spiritual messages and amplifier of divine energy, aiming to bring more hope, joy, and balance to our human collective. This is why I knew she was the perfect person to have this taboo persona conversation with. We all have parts of ourselves that we hide, parts we've been taught to believe make us unlovable. But what this conversation will help you understand is that when we shine a light on these hidden parts, we also have the potential to bring balance to our lives and in turn to the collective. You'll want to listen to the end because the taboo talk just gets juicier as we go on. To connect with Leilani, check the links in the show notes. And if you enjoy what you hear, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. All right, we are here with Leilani Mañulu, and today's salon conversation is taboo persona, or you might know that as alter ego. And the first time that I heard about this concept was with Carolyn Elliott, who's the author of the book Existential Kink, which I highly recommend. I'm in a workshop with her, or a course, and this concept of taboo persona was something that she suggested we try on. And when I first heard about this topic, what came to mind was Beyonce's alter ego, Sasha Fierce. And I don't know if you recognize this persona, but it's the persona that she takes on when she's doing performances. You can tell there's a difference between, there's a softer side to Beyonce and a more like epic, aggressive, sensual version of her. And that is the one that she invokes when she's in concerts. And I first heard about this when she was talking about Sasha Fierce in one of her documentaries or her concerts. And of course, she also has an album called I Am Sasha Fierce. And I mean, trying on this concept for myself has been incredibly revealing. It's just this opportunity for us to just dive into parts of ourselves that we don't usually feel comfortable doing, but it's so super liberating. It's incredibly liberating. And that's what we're here to talk about today, Leilani. And I know this is something that you and I have talked a lot about in our personal time. And I would love to, I'm just so excited to hear what you feel about the taboo persona and what you thought when you first heard about it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Josette. I'm excited to be here.
Yay, me too. So what do you think, Leilani? Let's get started. So Let's see. For me, what's so exciting about the taboo persona is that it really gives us permission to embody parts of ourselves that we usually deny. And it really helps us loosen up a bit, right? It helps us try things that we might usually just like not try. Would you agree? Is that something that you feel when you think of your taboo persona?
So just a little background for your listeners. I had no idea what the hell a taboo persona was until about a month ago when you sent me your write-up can we talk about our
let's talk about we're going to talk about our taboo personas for
Véro.
sure. Yeah. Go ahead. You can.
So you sent me a write up on Véro, and she was a badass. She is a badass. And I was like, I wonder what my taboo persona is like. And I just started writing about her, and it flowed out of me. This really vulnerable piece of like all of the parts of myself that are somewhere inside of me that I don't let other people see. And it was really liberating actually to connect with these parts of myself, because I think it's really easy for us, especially as women, and I can speak for myself living in the US in a very, hetero, cis, male dominated culture. It's really easy for me to kind of tuck those parts away and maybe be completely unconscious about it too. Like not even, so for me, it was really, it was kind of scary when I read back what I had written about my taboo persona, because she's like gritty and grimy and sexual and like doesn't give a fuck. Like, I don't give a fuck if you like me. I know who I am. And what that had done for me was that it set me down this path of like embodying her. So I'm a shaman, and I do a lot of work around examining my shadows, because I'm a light worker, but I can't do that effectively without examining my shadows. And she just like blew up every single one of my shadows when I discovered her. And so for me, it's been, this journey of really asking myself, like, okay, what is it about her? And her name's Scarlet. Her name's Scarlet Firestorm. And she's just like comfortable in chaos. And she's like a trickster and, feeding on men's souls and all of this. Please interrupt me, because I don't feel like I'm addressing your question.
No, you're totally there. So, you've helped us understand what the taboo persona is in through your reflection. So something that you said that was interesting is that she blew up your shadows. I think that's how you said it. You said she brought your shadows to light. And I think we have a lot of perception around the concept of shadow. Like if we're not somebody who's examining the concept of shadow, we might say these are things that we don't want to bring forward.
Right.
Like, why would we want to bring our bad shit forward? Like that makes no sense. Not only that, but embodying that. Well,
I mean, I'm so excited, so I don't mean to interrupt, but if we think about what the reason why we push these shadows away, and it comes back to this notion of being taboo, we push our shadows away because we're afraid of social rejection. Because if we bring these parts of ourselves forward that are technically not acceptable in this world that we live in, then we're going to be alone. Like that's what our brain has tricked us into thinking. And what this culture, this very Western centric culture has taught us into thinking, that if we show up as our whole selves, we are no longer lovable, right? Where the taboo persona, what Scarlet has taught me, and I let her lead a few times, went out by myself a few times. She was trying to take everybody home. It was just kind of hot, but like kind of a hot mess at the same time, right? But like if we think about the reasons why we push these parts of ourselves away, it's because we're afraid of rejection, and we're afraid of not being lovable, which is just the complete opposite, because the more that we're able to confront these shadows and have love for these parts of ourselves that we traditionally would want to push away, we're able to have a fuller experience and quite honestly bring people into our orbit that are able to hold space for all of who we are. Like, sure, we might get rid of the fucking duds that are kind of in our orbit today. But then we invite relationships that are rich and based on like loving who we are fully.
Oh, let's just sit with that. By bringing in the shadows, your taboo persona, by honoring those parts of you, you bring more of who and what you want into your orbit. I mean, I just got chills everywhere. Like in the power of being yourself, the amplification that happens when you are your true self, when you embody all the parts, is just off the hook. And I know that both you and I can attest to that once you start stepping into who you are at a soul level, I'm just full of chills. When you can start tapping into who you are at a soul level and you start resonating with more people, the grander effect is, I mean, that's what we're here for, but we're just missing the point a lot.
And I think, yes to all of that. And yes to all the goosebumps as well. I think there's also, when I think about when I first was like, because I'm a spiritual channel. So I hear from the spiritual realm and I get guidance. And the guidance was like, it's time for Scarlet to lead for a little bit, like let her into the driver's seat. And that was fucking terrifying. When I really think about what that, like that, when I connect with that feeling again, it was like, what if I completely lose control? Like, what if I get lost in this taboo persona? What if I love it so fucking much that I'm not going to recognize who I am anymore? You know, like, what if I let my shadows and these parts of myself that are so taboo? Like, what if I like don't find my way through and like bring balance and integration into all of it? Because balance is required, right?
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. And what I'll say to that, for those of you who are listening, because I feel like there are a lot of people here who are in that space of fear around letting this kind of terrifying part of ourselves take the lead, is that if you are here, it means that you have everything in your power to navigate this with grace and your inner wisdom and intuition, right? And all of the support that you have spiritually. I think that we tend to forget how powerful we are and how capable we are to do this work. We talk ourselves out of our ability to see through to the other side, to the lesson, to the balance, to the integration. But if you're here, there's a good chance that you're ready. And so the question that's coming through in this moment is, what could it look like for you to start exploring that taboo persona? And how could you let them lead?
Yeah.
It's scary, right?
It's scary. And maybe what we can do soon is, if you want to read your taboo persona, I know I want to read mine to give context, right?
Sure.
Because we can maybe juxtapose it to who we see ourselves in our daily life, you know, or, you know, the Josette versus, so my name, of course, Josette Leblanc. And then my taboo persona is Véronique O'Shine. And, you know, we can maybe, as we introduce them, we'll be able to see the difference. And, but that's the point. What I love, but before we do that, what I love about what your question is, what would it be like to just try? Because this, I think, is another thing. Yeah. It's another thing that we do. We're like all or nothing, you know, like it's not, it's gradual. It's gradual. And, you know, having brought her forward in my life, she comes in at times that I didn't even plan for her to come in. She's just like, I'm just going to take over this. Like your Instagram bio, I'm just going to take over, you know? And it's like, you get ounces of courage that you didn't have before, you know, it's really magical. Yeah. So let's go for it. Leilani, would you like to, or how do you feel?
Oh my gosh. I will. This is very vulnerable for me because I've only actually shared it with a handful of people. I use a lot of symbolism. So remember that I'm not like, my shadows aren't telling me to murder anybody. But yes, I would love to introduce you all to Scarlet Firestorm.
Okay.
And again, just remember this came out like in a rush. So Scarlet, she's a dark seductress, an elegant heartbreaker. She's walked through the depths of hell so your demons don't scare her. On the contrary, they turn her on and feed her insatiable need to climax over and over and over. She feeds on your meager humanity, sucking your lifeless bones dry of all of their marrow. She collects male souls for her own game, for her own gain. She'll make love to your soul, ripping open every single one of your wounds to expose them brilliantly, bleeding before her, a mere sacrificial offering for being in her presence. And when you're effectively blood dry, gasping, begging her to save you, she'll place you gently, elegantly in a shallow grave, cover you with earth, and dance over you. She's gone in the next heartbeat, leaving you wondering if she ever existed or if you made her up in your broken mind. Her sensuality follows her around, the most scintillating presence, luring even the most unsuspecting victims forward in a dance of fire and ice. Everything that you've ever dreamed of is encased within her knowing skin. She's been accused of black magic, and yet she is no witch or magician. She simply knows how to embody the energy of her victims and send it back to them made anew. Some would say the energy she returns is dark and ominous. Others would say it's sweet and decadent. The reality, she is simply a pure reflector. So what you send her way is what you get back on fucking steroids, completely amplified. If you're a sadist, an asshole, a narcissist, she will still entertain your advances. A skilled siren, she will play into your own game, again, reflecting back exactly what you want to hear, what you want to see. She may be the only person you fall in love with in your entire pathetic existence, and yet she will leave you even more broken than before you crossed her path. She will leave you questioning your existence, and that is exactly what she intends. You'll never see it coming, and you'll be even more ruined when she leaves. The last you ever see of her is her back as she walks away from you, which is inevitable. You'll watch her leave, curious about the angel wings that adorn her back, a brilliant white marvel speckled with opal energy, hints of blue flames dancing along them with random precision. How did you not notice them before? And how can such a fiery, divine enigma hold such familiarity with the darkness of your soul? You already know deep down that you'll never know. She's already gone.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
That is such a beautiful testament to your taboo persona. Just beautiful.
Yeah, she's a badass.
Yeah. How does it feel reading that out loud to us?
It feels vulnerable again, because there's still this like social conditioning, right? That says like, you can't say you're going to suck bone marrow dry. Like, there's still this just like, oh my God, what are people going to think? Which is exactly why this work is necessary, right? And so it's vulnerable, but it's also empowering, because it's like, she is a part of me, whether I want to admit it or not, whether I want to bring her forward or not, like she is a part of me, and she is dying to have some kind of way to express herself in this life of mine. Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned, like the courage that it takes to do that. It's commanding. It's important. We need to make sure that we're creating spaces, especially as we're continuing to elevate our consciousness and all of that. We have to be able to create space for the places that aren't comfortable. Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned, like she comes forward for me so often. Like I had kind of a tough thing to say to a friend recently, and she just took over and she's like, here's what I need. This is what I need. And this is what I need from you. And here's how I want to show up. And it was just this like very direct and clear expression of needs. And that's not something that's always come easy to me, but because she's like always knows what she needs, it was easy. Right. So
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. And what is so fascinating about that is like, as you read it, and as you say, like the judgments can come up, right? The person listening are probably like, whew, like some,
damn.
like, damn, yeah, like all the judgments at every point. And the point, I think it's the reflection. These taboo personas help us reflect back to ourselves. Like, why is this an issue? Is it because I actually desire that part, right? Is it, whose judgment is it really? Mm-hmm. Like, is it yours or is it somebody else's judgment that resonates from your background, right? From religion, from whatever, right?
Oh God, and so my priest growing up would be rolling over in their grave.
Right. Exactly. But the point, and then the other point you made about her coming up to support you in a very difficult conversation. We need it all. We need all the energy that we embody. And if we don't invoke her, she's not going to come help you. Right. Like, I would say that these taboo personas are pathways to channeling, to getting closer to, it's getting closer to divinity. I mean, this is the whole point of existential kink, is she says, in her book, Carolyn Elliott talks about how, as humans, we've incarnated in this lifetime in order to feel everything that it means to be human. And we try to make ourselves pious and all this, but the truth is, like, we have all ranges of experiences and emotions. And to say that one is bad and one is good, really limits our experience. Yeah. Do you want to add anything? I can read mine too.
No, I mean, the only thing that's coming through is like something that you said, which just feels so spot on, that I want to kind of amplify, is that the ways that we are allowing our taboo personas to come forward, and the ways that we are, in essence, like loving those parts of ourselves that feel unlovable or scary or difficult to love, it is bringing us closer to our divinity. And it's bringing us closer to being able to connect with our inner divinity without judgment, right? Like releasing that self-judgment around, like, okay, this is also part of my divinity, which I loved about the book. And I just started reading it, but she talks about, if this is the world that we live in, then God must be pretty kinky. Like, God must be like kind of fucked up, right? Like, and I know that sounds blasphemous for people, but at the same time, it's like, we have to be willing to embrace the shadow and the light. Like, we are made of light, but we're also made of shadow. And these parts of ourselves are not meant to be hidden away. They're meant to be explored and loved and integrated.
Mm-hmm. Integrated. Yes. Integrated. This is the point. And I think this brings it back to what you were saying earlier about, like, well, am I going to lose myself to this taboo persona? The point is integration. It's bringing it all together and loving it all. And this is the point with all energy work, spiritual work. It's the non-dual path, as Buddhists would say. It's non-dualism, right? So I'm only good, I'm only bad. No, it's like we're trying our best. And our best is like bringing them together is the closest we can come to peace, I would say, to a peaceful life. Yeah. So good. Oh my gosh. So I'll read mine. So it was really interesting to see where I went with this, because over the past year, so this, we're recording this on January 3rd. Happy New Year, by the way, 2022. And I had gone through, while writing this the year before, I was really exploring at a deeper level, who I was, who I am. And I was recognizing parts of myself where there was almost like this androgynous feeling to my energy, which is interesting because I've battled my whole life with the concept of what does it mean to be a woman? And like, I need to be sexy in order to be a woman, or like all this, the things that we learned that women should be. And my taboo persona is nothing like that. So I'm going to read her. So this is, like Leilani, this is the initial draft that I wrote. She's a wizard, not a witch, and man spreads like a mofo, a sifter of synchronicities and mercurial as fuck. Véro translates the wisdom of past lives, of Akashic archives, in a French-Canadian accent. The way her swift intellect serves her soul is a result of her hermaphroditic mind. You won't see a crown of pink flowers on her head, and she won't be the one you turn to for a comforting hug. You'll turn to her for soulful insight, strategy, and wisdom. You'll come to her because you want to push the boundaries of your current existence. You may even want to come to her because she won't judge your conversation with aliens and dead people. She talks to them too. She's the cheerleader of your homecoming. Véro plays the fool, but is far from being one. She tells it like it is and repairs misinterpretations like a plumber repairs leaky pipes. But she never over explains herself. She's not here to convince you. She's focused on what she wants and goes for it. If you're in her way, she might take you down, but that's on you. Kindly take a step back. What you see is what you get. And what you get is a magician on a mission. The world is burning and she has a hose. And that's it. Yeah.
How are you feeling reading that out loud?
I had chills all over my body again. Like, because for me, I think the part about like not wearing a crown and don't come to her for a hug. Like I have judged myself as not being compassionate enough, considerate enough, like the good girl syndrome. It's weighed on me. Right. And it's subtly weighed on me. And this is what happens for most of us, is that we have these subtle weights on us because we think that we need to adhere to the expectations that are around us. Right. Because if, again, as you said before, like if I'm not a good girl, then my family might disown me. Right. I might create rifts in my family. That's what I realize, is how much that is heavy. The true part of me wants to just go, wants to move. Right. And the true part of me knows deeply that I am not necessarily the one who is, I'm not the cozy, like, again, I come back to like, the crown of flower, like that's totally fine. I'm not the goddess on a pier. Like I'm the person you want to strategize, and it feels liberating. It's very liberating. So it's vulnerable, but mostly liberating. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel it. Yeah. I feel it. And it's 5:55 here as you're saying all of this. Yeah.
Boom. That's my number, as Leilani knows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, just feel into that. It's so exciting. So I'm just going to encourage the listeners to try that out, try it on, try your taboo persona. What are some questions that you might explore are, who are you tired of being? Right? Who are you tired of being? What's the opposite of that?
I feel like there's going to be a lot of people who are like, well, they're just like on a different plane, right? They're going to look at us and say, well, that takes incredible amounts of courage. But to those listeners, I would say, where is that coming from? Right? Like that self-doubt around your ability to stand in your wholeness. Where does that arise? Where is that arising from? And how can you choose courage in this moment to just like write a few paragraphs about the parts of yourself that you're afraid to show everybody else? Like the question that's coming through is like, when have you felt most alive? Right. And where does your taboo persona fit in with all of that? Because most of the time when we're really in like complete alignment and we feel like our energy is amplified, chances are your taboo persona is somewhere in the equation there.
Right.
So what parts of yourself showed up there, and how can you begin to explore what it means to bring that part of yourself forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that question of in what moments do you feel alive is the point, right? Because so for Véro, like the part about you don't come to her for a hug, like when people come to me for strategies and just like, what do you know about this? Brainstorming, right? I'm just like, pff.
Analysis with ease.
Yes, analysis with ease. I'm just like, give me a book, give me a framework. Let me figure out how that works in my life. And I'm just like, I feel like I found a huge gold mine, and then I just want to share it with everyone. Like, and, some people might be offended by that because who does she think she is? She's always trying to teach me and like there's all the things that come up, but that's just who I am. That's the Véro. And yeah, that's the parts when I become alive. Right. Leilani, how about you? How would you respond to that question?
I want to first just kind of the other day, it was like a couple of weeks ago, we were chatting and I was like, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I'm coming to you because you approach things with objectivity. Like, I think that you can see things from like a different perspective and not like get wrapped up in my emotions about something and in my mind, it's like, how do I say this gently? And you're like, thank you. Yes, that is who I am. Right. Like, and so it's just really funny to think that like, again, that's my shit too, to think that that was something to like, to temper in the ways that I'm saying, like, I love that you can approach, like, help me think through a problem objectively, because I am like complete 180 from that. Like and so I love that about you. And I love that you're owning it. It's so powerful to witness. When I think of like, when I have felt the most alive, it's just like, again, I think of like getting what I need, right? I grew up in a household where it wasn't safe or comfortable or encouraged for me to state what it is I need. I come from a Filipino household where women don't really get to center their needs. And so when I'm actually, saying like, this is what I want, this is what I need, and I'm stating that with like courage and fierceness, I'm like, I am a badass, right? Like, there's something really powerful about, I'm just going to say like a woman or, a self-identifying woman, just being really unapologetic about what she needs. And I also am a little bit of an adrenaline junkie too. So it's like seeking joy, but like, fuck all the rest. Right. Like, so I think of when I felt really, really wildly alive is when I went when I went skydiving for the first time and first and only time. But I was just like, this could end horribly. And yet I'm just going to savor the fuck out of this moment. And it was so joyful. And it was like this, like living on the edge. And I feel like that's a lot of who Scarlet is just like, I know there's consequence. Like there's consequences to our actions, but there's also this like aliveness that comes out when I allow myself to just feel into activities or relationships or whatever that feel risky. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So,
well, and the power of that now, like, let's take that and translate it into, let's say, daily life. Like, mm-hmm. So you got the extreme, like skydiving, but the point is the tapping into the fact that taking risks makes you feel alive.
Yes.
What else is living but taking a series of risks? And especially as who you are, an author, a podcaster, a shaman, you are creating your own life. Anyone's life is risky, but when you are an entrepreneur and a spiritual entrepreneur, the risks are endless. Mm-hmm. I mean, right?
Absolutely. And it's thank you for reflecting that back. And I really think that that's a huge part of my taboo persona, is just the willingness to take the risk. It's like the fuck it all, right? Like, it's like, well, this is what my soul is craving in this moment, and kind of fuck all the rest. And I'm just trusting that my divine power will keep me safe. And I know at some point, sometimes they say like, okay, we need you to just care a little bit so you don't kill yourself. Like, they've actually said that to me, like, just chill, like just a little bit. But that's part of this persona. The Scarlet is just like, I'm going to enjoy this life, and I'm going to enjoy it so hard, and the consequences will be what they are. And there's probably going to be fallout, and yet I can handle all of it.
So good. I can handle all of it. So good. And it just always comes back to liberation. I mean, when you can be yourself, it's just, there's nothing like it. And once you get a taste of liberation,
can't go back. Gateway drug.
Yeah, we're not talking about ascending and like enlightenment, and like, it's not when you can, I was reflecting on, and I also want to circle back to what you said about they and your guides telling you to come back, we'll talk about that. But when I think about who I was like when I started this path of self-discovery, if you ask me, like, who are you? Like, who are you, Josette? Like, I couldn't answer. And, you hear these times of periods of life where people are like trying to find themselves. And on that path, if you look hard enough, you're going to find moments of liberation. And liberation is just clarity into who your soul is. And and when you can start speaking from your soul's perspective and you keep going, it's just the opportunities and the magic that unfolds is just, you start understanding what it really means to live in this life. Yeah. I don't know if you want to add anything else, but I do want to circle back to that, to what you said. Yeah. So you said that sometimes when you're going too far, I'm air quoting here, too far, like into maybe Scarlet's desires or your own desires, whatever you want to call it.
Just her risky behaviors. Sometimes just the super risky, like, okay, there's actual like risk of harm here.
Right. So into your risky behaviors, you said that your guides bring you back and you hear those messages. I think this is really important because some people listening may not have access to that, to those voices, to those senses, to those sights, right? Your intuition is like the simplest way to talk about it. So yeah, I want to hear more about how you know that those voices are your guides, and tell us more about that for you.
Sure. I suspect I'm getting the sense that there's a lot of people who are earlier in their self-discovery that are going to be listening. And so what I would say to them, so that's one of my gifts is supporting people through that early phase. And so I'm grateful to have a lot of insight into that. At the end of the day, you are hearing from whatever spiritual support is around you. Sometimes that is quite literally like spirits. Sometimes that is just, you don't know where it's coming from. Sometimes it comes from the earth. Like there's a lot of ways that messages can flow to you. And I think at the end of the day, it's just about really understanding. I'll just say this because I think a lot of times people are like, well, what about like negative self-talk? Like, how do I know that that's not my guides? I will tell you right here and now, your guides will never, never diminish who you are. Like they may give you straight talk and say like, you're playing small or whatever, but they will never say you're stupid. They will never say all of these things that we trick ourselves into believing about ourselves. So I know, Josette, you talk a lot about ego. So that's like kind of ego. That's the part of our experience that we're frankly trying to understand, but eventually walk away from, right? Because these are the parts of ourselves that would trick us into staying small. That's just what's coming through. And so the difference because when you are standing in your wholeness and or accessing your divinity in whatever way that feels, you have this like knowing that you can trust it. Right there. When I think about a lot of leaders that I support, so I do executive coaching and things like that. It's like a gut feeling. Like I have a gut feeling. This is just not right. Like those are the types of pieces of information of your intuition trying to guide you home, basically trying to guide you home back to yourself. It can come through as like a song that plays randomly that had message. It can come through as like a lot of people who are clairsentient or are empaths, like it comes through in your physical sensations or your emotional state. But really at the end of the day, the more you begin to trust the the senses, the signs, like everything that's coming in, you'll begin to be able to discern. So if you go into that exercise with like just asking the question, like, is this my intuition speaking to me, or is this something else, like an old tape or like trauma or whatever, that in and of itself is going to be enough for you to start moving forward and to start being able to trust the true messages that are coming through that are trying to remind you of who you are.
That's such a good question. Let's repeat that. Is this coming from my ego or my higher self? And to reflect back, your higher self will never put you down. Your higher self, your guides, you're going to find your own language and concept of what that is too. Like I call it my higher self, my soul. But I also recognize, sometimes I'm asking guides, specific guides for clarity. And so whatever you want to call it, our basic understanding, I think we can all agree, is intuition, right? So is this my intuition speaking, or is this my ego speaking, right?
And your intuition is always trying to guide you back to wholeness, to standing firmly in who you are on a soul level. So the more that you can begin to discern, like, is this my intuition, or is this my ego, or some other narrative that's just, supporting my staying small, right? The more that you can begin to ask those questions and discern that, the more you'll be able to get the messages. Because that's the other thing about the universe, is that the universe, if you don't listen, like, the signs will stop. Like, if you just continue to move forward and ignore your intuition and live into a life that is smaller than what you can actually achieve and be, they'll stop. I mean, it won't be right away, right? But maybe the universe will change paths, because it's like, okay, well, this isn't working. This person is ignoring the signs or whatever. So, and I don't mean that to sound like scary, because it's not to invoke fear. It's really to say that it's time. It's time to start trusting the signs, the guidance, the messages that are coming through, because we are all on a path right now. You get to choose who you're going to be, and you can choose to live into your wholeness and bring our world out of this catastrophic state that we found ourselves in. Or you can choose to keep things the same and potentially miss out on this like incredible opportunity to live into who you're meant to be fully and have the impact that you want to have and that you're meant to have.
That's so good. And I also want to say about the point about the universe will stop talking to you, your intuition will stop talking to you. I also want to say that the universe might start like bashing you over the head. I know one of my big crossroads, when I was continuously ignoring my intuition, how was my intuition showing up? It was showing up in anxiety, and it showed up in a panic attack.
Sickness. Mine was depression and anxiety.
Yeah. On a spiritual level, that's the intuition saying, get out of here. I told you 1,000 times, please get out. You have resources. Use your resources. Here are all your resources. I am showing you, and you keep ignoring it. Yeah.
I believe that those of us who are really, really important to bringing our world out of this state that we're in, I do believe that we can't stay in that state for long. Like that state of like spiritual sickness is what I'm hearing, is like this place of just like being in complete misalignment. I think that you can do it for a while. I did it for years and years. And then finally it was just like, I'm going to die this way if I don't do something different. And there are a lot of us on this earth you think of, people who lose their life to depression and suicide. And And I have full goosebumps saying this. I think a lot of them are deeply intuitive feeling people because they just don't know that there is support, that there's community, that there are resources, that there are people like them that are saying, this is fucked and we can do differently and we can do better. And so, yeah, I mean, if anything, this is just a call forward to say, if this is you, we need you, right? We need you to start loving on yourself and to start listening to your intuition and to start making movement toward right alignment. And that's the thing about all of this is like, you know what's next, and you know what the stone on your path that's lit up in front of you, you know what it looks like, regardless of like how much in, this denial you're in about whether you can do it or not, like, you know what it is. So just take a leap, because the universe will always support that. Always.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. I want to kind of bring it back to the taboo persona in that way. The taboo persona helps us. I think part of the struggle, is all the feelings that we have to filter. And there's so much to feel, and there's so much wrongness. And the taboo persona helps us filter those feelings, right? Of course, therapy is so important. There's so many, ways that we can help our mental health or support our mental wellness, spiritual wellness. And, for the taboo persona is just one way to help us understand the full breadth of the emotions that we have and to honor those emotions. Because when we start making our emotions wrong, this is when we get in this spiral. But in this way, it helps us recognize that it is okay to have all these weird, fucked up feelings, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think of, when I think of Scarlet, my persona, my taboo persona, she's a little ragey. Like, she's kind of this, like, she's cool and collected and all that, but she also like has these like bursts of, like, I'm an Aries moon. So she's like definitely my Aries, like, and I think that because like I've told myself that rage is not an emotion that, that I can fully express or that I can do so and come back from, without like damaging everything around me and everyone around me. A big part of my path these last couple of months has been finding ways to truly express that rage, because if we're just continuing to shove it down, it's just going to show up in other ways. It just will show up. Like, for me, it's about like disassociating from it. But then, anything that fills me with rage, I disassociate from as well. So if you consider, being in a relationship, rage is going to come up, anger is going to come up. And if I'm not actively processing it, then it's going to affect my relationships. And it has. I mean, that's been the kind of the crux of my relationships to date, have been like, okay, when I get angry, I bolt. And that's just, it's not conducive to living a life. Like, it's hypocritical, right? When I say that, I stand in my wholeness and I love all of who I am, and I'm not able to actually allow space for the emotions that are really difficult that arise. And that is something that my taboo persona, Scarlet, has been really, really helpful around, because it's like, she's like, yeah, we're fucking angry. We've had a lot. So much shit. I'm a survivor of trauma. And it's like, we get to be angry. Like, we have a right to be angry. And so I think it's really important to consider how our taboo personas can also help us process these kind of like psychic, suppressions that we've been suppressing these parts of ourselves for so long, that in order for us to really, truly stand in our fullness, we have to process in a way that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And it's true. The point you made about like, when you suppress that part, you're suppressing all the parts. You're
suppressing joy, you're suppressing love. Like, there's no way. And Brene Brown, I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. And she talks about this. She talks about the like, it's not possible to just suppress like certain emotions. Like when we shove down anger and fear, we're also limiting our capacity to experience and express things like joy and love and all of these things that we want to connect with as humans. And the opposite too, like when I'm able to like express my rage in a way that's not harmful to myself or others. Because I've had to scream into the void a few times. I've had to punch pillows. Like I've had to like do these things where I never thought that I would feel so out of control with like my body. And yet it's kind of like leveled out. It's like my rage is now like, I don't have to like do these big, because it's like processed. And now I can experience joy in a way that is fuller, because I'm not spending so much energy trying to suppress this other part of myself, right? Like it's all out in the open. So it's like, then I can just sit with these emotions as they come up and not have to like use all this psychic energy to like try to manage it all. We're not meant to.
Not manage it all. That is it. And then that you're leaning into ease. When you lean into ease, you're leaning into flow. When you lean into flow, you're just, I mean, if anybody here has any understanding of flow, like when you're in the zone and you're nothing else is bothering you, that is epic. And the more you can live it to that, I mean, that's what living is.
You're clearing away the clutter. If you think about like living in a house, and you can, this is the image that's coming through. This is all divine. And so if you think about living in a house, and if this house is like your mind, if you have like these boxes, like hoarders, if you have boxes everywhere and you're not like, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to look at that. Like, and they're piled up, like, how are you able to truly do anything? Like you can't dance in your house. You can't write. You can't be creative. You can't have people over, like, because this clutter is just like the energy. And if you understand energy at all, it's just the energy is fucking stuck and stagnant. And so if you are brave enough to begin to spend a little bit of time to open each box and to say, oh, okay, well, I love this thing and I want to spend time with it, but then I want to let it go and like really begin to clear out the space, then we have so much more energy and so much more space and room to do what we're meant to do here and to be in that flow. Right. So that you can thank my guides for that analogy.
A good metaphor is always incredibly helpful. It's so true. Yeah. You don't want to invite people to your cluttered house. So you're not gonna, how is that?
And then you're hiding a big part you're hiding your home. Like our minds are where we feel safe. Our minds are where we go. And so if we're not allowing people into our experience, like what a lonely existence, right?
Yeah. Leilani, so grateful for this talk. And this is the inaugural podcast conversation, the inaugural Soul Salon conversation. Just so grateful for your insight, your wisdom, your experience, your willingness to share Scarlet with us. I'm just, I got chills again. I'm going to have to stop saying that. I encourage you all to celebrate your chills. So where can we find you if we want to be in touch with you?
Yes. Well, I am most active on Instagram. So my handle is at Shaman Leilani, ShamanLeilani. I'm also on Twitter and Clubhouse at the same handle. And you can go to my website, www.shamanleilani.com. You can pick up my book. You can listen to the podcast. I would love to connect with you. I am a massive connector. So please do seek me out if you're interested. I would geek out on this kind of stuff all day. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And please come again.
I will.
Awesome. Thank you, Leilani.